movement there on the Uganda Stock Exchange, with the local companies doing nothing at all as well. However, like we've mentioned, the top gainers were KCB and Nation Media Group. And when you look at KCB Group had a 12.68 shillings increase in price, and that was a 1.02% increase, closing the day with a price of 1,250.57 Ugandan shillings. And when you look at their beginning price, the day began with a price of 1,503.12, and definitely they gained some value at the end of that day. KCB, however, began the year with a 1,414.32 Ugandan shillings and has since lost about 11.4% of their price valuation on the stock price there for KCB. And when you look at their year-to-date performance, they have lost about 11.6% of their price valuation, ranking them the 10th in terms of year-to-date performance. Now, like I said, most of these cross listings, the main issue is not the demand and supply of their stock, but price movements on their domestic exchange. In this particular case in Kenya, when the day ends for trading, the Uganda Securities Exchange harmonizes the prices of the cross-listed stocks here on the Uganda Stock Exchange with the prices on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. So perhaps, let's say KCB here did not have any performance changes, didn't have any trades, but on the Nairobi Stock Exchange it had a very significant change that could have impacted its price, maybe moving upwards. So at the end of the day, the Uganda Stock Exchange has to make sure that the price of stock of KCB here corresponds with the price of the stock on the Kenyan stock market. And so when you look at the performance there of this stock, it really correlates and shows a picture of more of what's happening on the Nairobi Stock Exchange to what's happening here on the Uganda Stock Exchange. And so the company definitely has some other factors as well that could influence some of these price movements, including also probably the foreign exchange rate for the Nairobi Stock Exchange here in Uganda. You have the Ugandan shillings and then the Kenyan shillings. All those things could come in as factors that influence the movement of the price on the Uganda Stock Exchange. Now, the shareholders should be worried at investing in KCB because over the last 1 month, the company has lost 10% of its stock value from the 22nd of August to the 21st of September. You can imagine 10% of the value there on the stock market lost just because of several factors that are affecting the company here in East Africa. But definitely, if you are a longer-term investor, I would still advise you'd rather invest in KCB back in the Nairobi Stock Exchange rather than here. They last had a trading volume on the 11th of August 2022, and this was about 296 shares. So, like I said, the market activity is not so good for the cross-listed companies here in Uganda. Even when we see their prices move up, it's definitely not influenced by demand and supply. And for a company as good as KCB, I would advise you would rather have them invested in at the Nairobi Stock Exchange than in Uganda. That's personal advice, but you can think otherwise, and it's absolutely okay for you to think so. When you look at since their listing, they were listed on the 19th of October 2010, so they have about 12 years of experience on the stock exchange, and this is good enough, at least for a company to become to achieve some confidence within the market and see that investors can actually predict and investors can trust the company and get to buy its stock. And so, yeah, consider KCB if you are only a long-term investor, but even if you're not, please try to look onto the Nairobi Stock Exchange for some of these stocks here. And when you look at Nation Media Group, NMG also had the same story. Yesterday, NMG moved up by 0.56% on the stock exchange here in Uganda. The company is currently the 14th most valuable given its market capitalization, which is about 108 billion Ugandan shillings, and that was a 0.506% increase in the pricing there. That's about 0.507% of the entire stock exchange. Yesterday, KCB, NMG moved up by about 3.17 Ugandan shillings, closing the day with a price of 573.77 Ugandan shillings. And yeah, they have about 189 million shares that are outstanding and 108 billion market capitalization on the exchange. The other competitors, New Vision Printing and Publishing Company, is at 11.9 billion market capitalization and about 155 Ugandan shillings closing price, representing a year-to-date loss of about 42%. And that is NMG for you. Now, on the losing side, we had Cipla. Cipla had about 70 shillings yesterday closing price and closed the day with a price of 65 shillings after losing about 5 shillings, and that was a 7.14% decline. Cipla is the only pharmaceutical company that is listed on the Uganda Stock Exchange, and when you look at its listing, it was listed on September 17th, 2018, and has a total market capitalization of 237 billion shillings, and currently is the 11th most valuable stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange, which is about 1.11% of the Uganda Stock Exchange equity market. Yesterday, we had about 7,400 shares that were traded with a gross turnover of 481,000. And shares outstanding at 3.65 billion with a market capitalization of 237 billion Ugandan shillings. Cipla, yesterday, after dropping about 7.1%, was the bottom loser. However, it began the year with a price of 92 shillings, 92.0 to be specific. And when you look at their curve there, they were trading about 92, above even 92 probably, way before the month of January 2022. However, they have shed about 29.4% of their price valuation, ranking them the 14th on the Uganda Stock Exchange in terms of year-to-date performance. Shareholders should also be worried of investing in Cipla due to the fact that it has lost about 7% of its stock value in the last 1 month. Now, Cipla has a good side and a bad side as well, because Cipla Quality Chemical Industries is the only pharmaceutical company pharmaceutical company that is listed on the exchange. And as an investor, sometimes you look at a sector before investing. You must be investing in a sector that you feel is promising, a sector that you feel is going to make money soon. However, Cipla has only registered a profit just, I think, this year during their financial year results release, of course, in their annual general meeting. That's when Cipla came out to actually declare a profit for the first time since its listing in 2018. And so it is still something we are still watching, quite dodgy for new investors. If you're a new investor, CIPLA can be something you might not want to look at. But for seasoned investors, they are actually gearing up to invest in CIPLA. Why? Number one, because their stock is going to probably go up probably in the next 2 years, because they are coming up with a new branch, that is the anti-cancer drug unit, which is going to be manufacturing cancer drugs. Currently, they're mainly focused on the ARVs and anti-malarials, but at the moment they are looking at pushing even further to the anti-cancer drugs, which will definitely also probably increase their revenue. CIPLA Quality Chemicals, on the other hand, is the 7th most traded on stock in the last 3 months, from the 22nd of June to the 20th of September. And it has traded a total of about 170,604 shares in this period, which is valued at 11.9 million Ugandan shillings over the period, with an average of about 2,708 traded shares per session. A volume high of 16,600 shares was achieved on the 23rd of June for the same period. And you can see they have had activity on the 20th, on the 19th, on the 14th, not so frequent, and as well not so scanty. Generally average activity, as I can see on the stock market here on the Uganda Securities Exchange. When you look at Uganda Clays yesterday, they also recorded the highest volume the second day in a row. However, let's have a look at their pricing here. Their pricing slightly decreased by about 0.07%, and Uganda Clays comes on the year-to-date performance of about 15.4% gain. Still, they ranked the first in terms of year-to-date. However, investors should take caution that Uganda Clays has registered recent poor performance after having lost about 21% of its value in the past 4 weeks. It is still the 5th most traded stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange over the past 3 months, from the 20th of June to the 20th of September. However, still precaution has to be taken because of the recent poor performance, especially on the 1-month basis, after losing 21% of their price valuation in the last 1 month or 4 weeks. They have had a volume high within the period of the last 3 months of about 1.46 million, which was achieved on the 19th of September. That was on Monday, and they have shown recent aggressive activity. However, the price is declining, and that is very, very worrying. In terms of 3 months, they have lost 21.1%. In terms of 6 months, they have lost a 34.8% of their price, but have only gained in terms of year-to-date by 15.4%. So there's still a lot to watch when it comes to Uganda Clays. I wouldn't still advise novices or new investors to come in and start with UCL. You would rather go into a collective investment scheme or a unit trust fund if you are a beginning investor, rather than getting into this particular stock of Uganda Clays. It could be a little bit risky as well. That was Uganda Clays, the top mover still. You're seeing that they still have big volumes being traded on, but the challenge is still locked up with their pricing. The pricing has been going down for the last couple of days, and that should worry you as an investor. When you look at Stanbic Bank Uganda, yesterday Stanbic traded over 336,000 shares on the stock market. However, there was no change in price. It remained stable at 21.0 Ugandan shillings. Their capitalization as well remained at 1.07 trillion, which is 5.03% of the Uganda Stock Exchange equity market. And they currently are the fifth most valuable because of the data I've just mentioned there for you. The Stanbic Bank Uganda is still on the second, in the second position in terms of the most traded on stocks on the Uganda Stock Exchange, and over the past 3 months they have had a total of about 23.7 million traded shares that have been transacted, and about 497 million has been transacted over the period. The company has a volume high of about 10.2 million shares that was achieved on the 8th of August 2022 for the same period. And when you look at the activity, still a little bit scanty, but not so scanty. Quite an active stock you have here for Stanbic, and quite affordable, because when you're buying stock or picking a stock, of course you will have to look at affordability as well. That's a very important factor for you to reconsider while buying yourself some stock. Bank of Baroda also returned to action yesterday. It traded a volume of about 213,800 shares on the stock market, and their gross turnover was about 18.2 million Ugandan shillings. And the shares outstanding are currently at 2.5 billion and 213 billion market capitalization on the Uganda Stock Exchange. The company is still losing in terms of year-to-date performance. They lost from 95.5 Ugandan shillings, and that is to around 85 at the moment, and that was an 11% that was shed off their price valuation, ranking them the 9th in terms of year-to-date performance. Well, Bank of Baroda is still the #1 most traded stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange in the past 3 months, from the 22nd of June to the 20th of September. And within this period, they have had a total volume of about 35.5 million shares that was traded on the stock market, with over 3 billion shillings transacted on the company, and a volume high of 27.5 million shares, which was achieved on the 13th of August, of the 13th of July rather, within this period. Comparing the performance of Stanbic with its other banks that are listed, we have Equity Bank, who is still on the year-to-date loss of 7.04%, KCB at 11.6%, and Stanbic at 19.2% loss. The only gainer here is National Insurance Corporation, who is at 13.7% appreciation in terms of the year-to-date performance. That is it regarding most of the companies that were listed, that participated rather in yesterday's trading. Although we have other companies, of course, in the squeeze back there, you will find them there. That is British American Tobacco Uganda at 15,000, Bank of Baroda at about 85 shillings, Centum Investments at 297, and when you have look at DFCU Bank is at 547 Ugandan shillings, East African Breweries Limited at 4,438 shillings, Equity Bank Limited at 1,485. Jubilee Holdings Limited is at 7,766. Kenya Airways at 121 shillings, and KCB Group at 1250, and MTN at 185, and National Insurance Corporation at 5.8 Ugandan shillings, whereas New Vision is at 155 and 573 for Nation Media Group. And Uganda Clays at 15 shillings, whereas Wumeme is at 2,000. By the way, Wumeme, 200 shillings rather. Wumeme yesterday also did some trading after trading about 1,000 shares on this particular day of trading. Now, regarding the summary here, we have about 1,102,935 shares that were traded yesterday, corresponding to a market value of about, 48.2 million shillings. And compared with the previous day of trading, there was a 33% decline in the volume. So the volumes contracted, and 14% decline in the turnover on the Uganda Securities Exchange. The current market capitalization of the Uganda Securities Exchange stands at 21.4 trillion Ugandan shillings. And like I mentioned, all the indices remained stagnant, and that is the offshore index and the local company index on the Uganda Stock Exchange. That summarizes the trades. If you want to participate in these trades, you can open yourself an SCD account. That is by dialing star 165 star 95 hash, and you follow the prompts, and definitely they will give you a portal where you put your details like your national identification number, or your you get your passport photo for those using the easy portal on the www.use.org, and you will be in for it, and definitely you will buy yourself some stock. The stock brokers are also open and available if you need any help, and one of them is SBG Securities, Stanbic Bank Uganda, and you have Crested Capital, Dyer and Blair, as well as you have UAP Old Mutual, and the latest Cheaper Technologies being one of now the stock brokers there for the Ugandan Stock Exchange. And definitely, please get yourself some of those. But as well, Zabu is another initiative that I could cite for you if you are looking at investing in the treasury bonds and bills across East Africa, and the exchange traded funds. Altex East Africa, in conjunction with Altex Clearing, have come up with this initiative, and under this initiative, you will be able to buy stock in East Africa, not only in Uganda, but in Tanzania and Kenya as well, by simply dialing star 292 hash and following the prompts. And within 24 hours, you receive a notification on your phone, and you will have been able to transact this particular money onto the accounts, and without a need for actually any intermediaries or intermediates such as stockbrokers and so on. Exchange, the Altex East Africa Exchange is licensed by the Capital Markets Authority to carry out this trading, and they are definitely going to give you a hand when it comes to trading in securities across East Africa. You don't need even the internet to be able to trade on some of these instruments. You just have to be available and be able to carry out these transactions. At the moment, you can still use MTN absolutely free of charge, but Airtel as well is also coming on board, where you can still dial star 292 hash and be able to carry out these trades. We are going to take a quick breather. We return with our final segment, where we look at the Nairobi Stock Exchange and get to look at the 65 companies. About 50 of the 65 companies actually were able to participate in the trading, and this is an awesome amount of activity, which we should definitely criticize here and see why the markets are improving so rapidly and what we should expect. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
Smart 24, driving business.